still do 7 NUFC Matters shows for free a week. But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications option. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.
It's a question of taste with you, well, you've gone sour. You want the world plus everything, but you won't work an hour. And now your questions are get creeping and you go and buy our flowers. You throw away the dreams we had, boy. I won't allow it. I said we're gonna fall out. Let's see you get out. I think we're gonna fall out. Just shut your mouth.
Good evening, welcome along to NUFC Matters. It is the professionals. We're going to do an hour tonight. Stu's had a really busy week. Mitch is at Chelsea Robs. So we are going to do an hour, and we'll start just by looking back for Stu on the Carabao Cup win. 4 goals, Stu. A nice 4-1 win. I think me and the lads were talking about it last night. It was a professional performance and in a game really where, you know, in the past against Wimbledon and Tranmere in recent seasons, we've struggled really to put goals past the lower league teams, but that was a comprehensive performance.
Well, that's it. It shows what people know and what they don't know. The doom merchants, the gloom and doom merchants were out in force before the game, weren't they? And saying it's not going to be easy, it's going to be a tough game. I'll take a 1-0, I'll take a 2-1. To be fair, any win's a good win. But we're in a situation where it's like it seems to be quite popular to criticise. It's easy to criticise, and we spoke about this just last week with the abuse Harvey Barnes was getting, and then the game was played on the Sunday, and all of a sudden it turned to Lewis Miley, and it really is a sad indictment on society where people have to criticise people who are doing a job they would love to do and never have the ability to do it. And as I said last week, Steve, I think it's more on the individual giving the abuse from behind a false name, whatever, than it is on the person. And as Newcastle fans, you know, we always are known for our loyalty. And, you know, we have a song, "We'll support you evermore." Is there an extra line that has to go on that? Only if we're winning and you're playing really, really well. Because when everything's going well, the best tale of that is Paul Gascoigne. Everyone wants to be your friend. But when things aren't going well, that's when you need your friends. And that's when you need people around you to support you. And these cheap shots from people who really are just like plankton, in my opinion. But regarding the game, I thought it was probably just what we needed. We got the goal and very quickly got the second goal, and as a contest, the game was over. And from there, it was cruise control and allowed people to express themselves a bit more and get the minutes into their legs and get a bit of confidence up. And the aforementioned Lewis Miley, I thought was outstanding, all bar in one pass. You know what I mean? But it shows the depth of our squad. You can make 7 changes going into the Bournemouth away game, which has always been a tricky fixture for us, with the exclusion of the COVID year, and then 7 changes again going into this game, and they ran into it. They went into it focused, determined to retain the cup and not go out, because I think with it being live as well, the TV channels are hoping for an upset, and what better upset would that be as the cup holders to go out. but they never had a sniff, and it was a dominant performance as it should be. But they did what they were meant to do, and they did it well. So I'm very, very pleased with the result, and hopefully it's a springboard going into the coming fixtures.
You're pleased with that result. I'm very pleased with this result. Crystal Palace 2, Liverpool 1. Final score. Unbelievable, because Liverpool thought they'd done it again. Last minute goal. Shearer had scored after a blatant handball, it has to be said, by Salah. And a winner for Palace in the 97th minute, which is great. Just going through the results, because this is leading into what I wanted to speak about next. Brentford 3, Man United 1. Chelsea 1, Brighton 3. Palace 2, Liverpool 1. Leeds 2, Bournemouth 2. Sean Longstaff getting a goal today. Man City 5, Burnley 1. And Forest and Sunderland to play tonight. Haaland getting 2 goals in the last 5 or 6 minutes there as well, just to add to Burnley's woes. But Mitch, coming to you. We've seen a few games now in the Premier League. We've seen Newcastle play. But overall, what have you made of the start of the Premier League season? And who's your favourite to win the league on this occasion and get those Champions League positions? I mean, at the minute, with the table, we've got Liverpool top, 15 points. Palace now second with 12. Bournemouth third with 11. And Man City fourth with 10 points. Of course, Newcastle Arsenal play tomorrow. Arsenal currently in 5th place on 10 points. Spurs, of course, playing tomorrow as well on 10 points. Chelsea, they're down in 7th place on 8 points. And Sunderland, at the moment, in 8th place. It's the usual suspect, of course, in around those positions. It's very difficult to read the league at the moment. What are you feeling? You've seen enough of the teams already. Rob, whose house you're at, tonight, Chelsea fan as well. How's you feeling? What's your thoughts on the Premier League this season? Who's going to win it?
Can you do that again with a translator?
Yeah, I thought it was just me. I thought it was just me hearing that, or not hearing it.
Did your best, Norman Collier there, mate. I think I know where you're going with that. Look, it's hard to look past the usual suspects at the minute. But what we're not seeing, and that result today for Liverpool, is that last season Liverpool benefited from having a level of consistency that no other team had. And I think maybe there's a few more issues in that camp than we're maybe thinking, certainly in terms of egos. And Slot's got a job to manage that. I'll be interested to see how Arsenal perform against us tomorrow. I think that's a huge game for us tomorrow. The one thing I'd say about us is I've never seen us look so defensively consistent. We were just talking about that before here. I can't remember a time where you could look at our back line and look at our defenders and perm, 2 back fours, 3 different combinations of back fives, and be comfortable with whoever's there. I don't think I can genuinely remember a time when we were like that. What we've missed is clearly someone to put the ball in the back of the net, and that's coming. We've got Waldemar now, which is not far away. So I think, and I think we're proved in midweek that some of our football can be scintillating. And yeah, okay, it's only Bradford, but you've got to put them away and you've got to do it still. And we did it. And there's more in the tank. There's no doubt about that. There's also better players on the bench to come in. So I think tomorrow turns into a very, very big game in terms of not just as a game itself, but how the rest of the season could pan out.
Stu, what's your thoughts with regards to who's going to win the league this season? You've seen a few of the teams, Liverpool, Man City, Arsenal.
Well, I said at the start of the season, I think Arsenal will win it, and I give the reasons why. Might have sounded out of bitterness. If you recall, I said it on this channel, on this show, that I think Liverpool have too many egos to go, and at the time I had my temporary following of Liverpool E-Reds who wanted to watch everything I was doing, and I'll take that bet. Well, I don't take universal credit bets, but anyway, I think Arsenal win it. I think they've got a better squad, and as Mitch was just saying there, our squad looks stronger, although quite obviously the starting 11 isn't currently, but our squad depth is probably the best it's been for many a year. So I think Arsenal will win the league. After tomorrow, they can win as many games as they want until we'll play them again. But I think Liverpool have got this situation now with too many cooks spoiling the broth. And it smacks to me of like what France went through for about 3 or 4 tournaments. All these people want to be, I'm the superstar. And they've managed to scrape wins in the last few minutes on just about every game they've played. That can't last forever. And today, as someone wrote on their commas, bit up the backside. Now, that doesn't mean they're a bad team, because they're not. And it would be foolish of me to suggest they are. But the question was, who do I think will win the league? And my mind hasn't changed from Arsenal, because I think once they hit their stride and get into the rhythm that they are capable of doing, they'll get a lot more belief. Where now Liverpool is the biggest scalp of all, and Palace have just shown you go at them, as they did in the Charity Shield, as we did with 10 men. You go at them and their defence is vulnerable. And I will repeat, they've probably got the most overrated centre-half I've ever seen in the Premier League. And although he's not a bad player, he's not as good as the press on their fans are led to believe. The other ones want the way. The full-backs are a bit iffy. And I think if you've got the cojones to go at them, you can cause them a lot more trouble than they're being allowed. You sit back and let them play, they will beat you, because they have unbelievable talent in the second and third part of the field. But I think their defence is the biggest problem. And what they didn't expect was to get both Isak and Ekitike, and maybe they got a bit too greedy, and now they've got an issue to solve. And we've seen that in midweek. The Ekitike, who took his shirt off, for a tap in the League Cup against a team in the division below you. It's not exactly something you should be celebrating that way, but that was him. You could tell it was pent up frustration with him saying, "I am the best. I've done everything so far. And look, I've just come on and scored. The other fella didn't." So I'm sure it's not all rosy in the garden, and I'm sure Melwood, where they train, will be a very interesting place to be on Monday morning. So I still think Arsenal will win the league, and it's obviously there's 32 games to go for Liverpool. So after tomorrow, Arsenal still have 32 games to go, and I'm sure they'll be able to claw back. I honestly expect Arsenal to win the league this year.
Okay, good stuff. Tell us who you think might win the league in the chat after these first few games have been played out. It starts to, by the time we get to the end of October, it starts to take shape, the league, and it'll be interesting to see where we're at. Stu, just a quick one on Darren Eales. I read the email out last night from Darren. Yeah. Obviously, what was your take on that?
Well, I thought it was, sometimes when you get these statements from the club, you can tell they were written for him by someone else, and I'm sure this was, but you could tell it was personable. He had his input into it, and then it would have been drafted differently, and it was from the heart. And I know Mitch said last night, and we've mentioned many times that we were fortunate enough to be sitting with him when Newcastle won I can't even remember the name of the trophy. It was in Riyadh season anyway, when we had the VIP tickets and we sit next to him, as they actually stood next to him when the trophy got held aloft by Jamal Lascelles. And he turned around and looked at us jokingly. We got photos with him. I'm sure you put them on the channel before, Steve. We got photos with him, and he turned around and said to us both, "Well, my job's done. I haven't been in here for 100 days and I've won a trophy." So he has a sense of humour, and he gets the passion. Now, that doesn't mean he's devoid of criticism, and I've mentioned in the past regarding his illness, it's a horrible illness, and I wish him every bit of luck and strength in his fight to beat it, and I'm sure he will. But there's still, for me, if I'm going to be consistent, there's been flaws in his tenureship, but ultimately, I think it was Mitch that said it last night. Has there been a more successful CEO? And the answer is no, there hasn't, because the last time we were winning trophies, the CEO wasn't even an acronym. So he has been very successful in his period, and it could kickstart it. But I think this is like sounding like praise Mitch at the moment. But he said again last night, it seems to be like the changing of the guard now. You know, we all know the stories revolving around why Amanda and Mead had left. Was there a power struggle? And quite clearly, Darren Eales won that one. Now it seems to be that the club have to go again. And it's a bit like the team. You know, you can't keep the same team forever, and you've always got to look to improve. And he was, I thought, very lavish and humble with his praise for the new CEO. And I think he looks at it and thinking, like, this club is going somewhere. And it was nice to hear that his kids are loving the area, his family's loving the area. And unless he gets another high-profile job, I could see him settling in the area. And I've got no problem with Darren Eales because he was a very high-class appointment for where we were at that time. And the club has grown under his stewardship, and the club has grown. And like most of us, errors have been made, but we're in a better place now than we were when he took over. So I know you'll be watching, Darren. Nothing personal, mate, and I wish you all the best. And I'm sure you'll be very successful, whatever you choose to do thereafter.
Question from Barry Mitch. Do you think we'll ever be able to offer the same wages as the Big Six under PSR?
That will take a hell of a long time. Need a significant restructure. I personally think PSR and that kind of cost control will be history within the game for us in the next few years. I think that's the only way to keep certain clubs happy around Europe. I think there's going to be a reset of some description. Certainly in the Premier League, there needs to be a reset, and some of that's probably already happening behind the scenes, in my opinion, too. We're not even close to fully understanding the ripples of the loss of the APT case for the Premier League against Man City, for example. How the Premier League handle, when it eventually comes to light, the 117 cases against Man City, how they handle the current situation with Chelsea and the self-reported breaches, I think is significant. And I have very little confidence that the Premier League will be able to win all of those, to be honest with you, because they've got a nice track record of not really winning much. Legally, they seem very almost inept, really. So PSR, I think, is something we'll stop talking about eventually, because I think that kind of cost control will eventually go out of the game.
Stu, do you agree with Mitch?
Yes, mostly. The answer to Barry's question to me is no, we won't. Under the current guise of the way the rules are, we won't be able to compete because we're not allowed to grow to the capability that we are capable of. But we are making inroads, strides, and it's been mentioned just about every week on this platform where we could catch up quicker. But in real terms, we can't get to the level revenue of a Manchester United or a Liverpool or an Arsenal or whichever way Man City do their figures with sponsorships, because they got in before the gate was closed, didn't they? However, and I stress however, for me, it's the rules have been changed to pacify those who were going to do the breakaway for the European Super League. And there's nothing more, what's the phrase, corruption in plain sight, when you talk about us in the Champions League versus, say, Manchester City in the Champions League, we finish in the top 8, as an example. So, and they finish in the playoffs and then get knocked out in the playoffs. We then go through to the last 16, we go through to the quarterfinals, we go through to the semi-finals. Manchester City, for being knocked out in the first stage, would still earn more money than us from the competition, as would all the other, well, Manchester City aren't a legacy club, but of all the other clubs that were touted to be, to go to join the European Super League. And I think it was quite clear, the slap on the wrist they got with the 3 million, was it 20 million pounds between 6 of them, so just over £3 million each. That was their slap on the wrist for being naughty boys and wanting to leave the league. So until these things are challenged properly, or until there's a level playing field, I don't think we can compete wages-wise, salary-wise, unless we start selling the Isaacs 1 year, Tonali the following year, Livramento the year after, to generate the income to pay the wages of the others. But then what you're doing is weakening your team to pay a weaker team more money. And that's the sort of road we don't want to walk down. So things have to change, but I know I sent my rushed version for my rushed edit for the new fanzine, Steve, and just to give people a glimpse of them, because I'm sure anyone who's watching this will be one of the people who buy the fanzine. I don't think anyone buys that fanzine without watching NUFC Matters. And it's not me being a happy clapper. It's not me being saying, where were we 4 years ago and under Ashley? But for me, it's a dose of realism. So if we go back to where we were 4 years ago, before the takeover, even 5 years ago, because we know that the takeover had been happening for about 18 months before it finally got approved. The thoughts of playing Barcelona and competing and being unfortunate not to at least get a point would have been in the realms of fantasy. You know, those were cast in history, like for a generation ago when we were regular in the Champions League. Was it 3 years out of 5 we got the Champions League? But now we're 2 years out of 3. And not to give away my rushed scribes, but this seems better. This seems more serious. Under Keegan, it was a fairy tale, and I think deep down we all knew it was going to end. But we're just getting a taste for it, and we're just gonna keep getting better. And yes, there will be bumps on the road, and yes, there is obstacles put in our way to stop us progressing as quickly as we'd like to, but progress we will. And this is going back to the first thing I said is, as a fan base, we need to stick together. If someone's not having a good game, if someone's going through a bad spell, that's when they need your support. They don't need your support when they've just banged in a hat-trick. You know what I mean? They've got every man and his dog supporting them then. We are Newcastle United. The clue is in the second word, United. And I don't think it's and I'll be careful how I say this when I say real fans or true fans, because what's a real fan? And that's another debate. Mitch and myself, everyone who watches this knows we've done more miles than we care to remember watching this team, and we do it all again. And we've never been privileged enough, apart from probably a 5-year period where we went with expectation to win away from home, rather than, well, we're going away for a good piss up for a day or for a weekend. That's what the away days were. Now, when we're in a cup competition like against Bradford, it wasn't a banana skin, because I don't think anyone thought we'd really get beat, whereas in the past we would have. And this is how we're progressing. And it's our mindset that needs to progress with it. So sometimes the football on the pitch runs ahead of the people above them off the pitch, but then they're ahead of us as fans mentality-wise, because they know how to make things big. They know how to get this club to where they want to be, and it's their job, their task to do it. Our job as fans is to keep supporting. And I don't want to sound like a really old man. We've never had it so good for so long. And we've all seen us win a trophy. Not that we should just stop there, but just stop and think about what we've done since October the 7th, 2021. And where will we be in another 4 years? Where could we be? And I guarantee you we'll be challenging consistently for every trophy that we enter. We'd be capable of winning it. We're going to have a team that's capable of winning it. We've already talked about having a better squad. So we're going to tomorrow where we could beat Arsenal for the 4th time in a row at home. When's that ever happened? This is where we are now.
1996, you've got to go back to. I think I mentioned it last time.
There you go. It's a generation ago, Steve, isn't it? So it was, 30 years ago? So, which is a generation. So you're going back a generation to think, right, we are realistically challenging the top teams with one hand tied behind our back and blindfolded with the PSR issues, yet we're still doing it. And Do you know what I like best when it probably has more effect over here? Well, not just here in the Middle East, but any fan who was watching the show and who's a supporter of Newcastle United would I'm sure would agree. You can smell the fear in the voices of the opposing fans.
Yeah.
Back home, everyone supports Newcastle, so you're in that bubble. But yeah, like Mitch is sitting in a Chelsea fan's house. You know, we've got West Ham supporters as friends. We've got name every team in the league. Gillingham supporters as friends, and the way they talk about Newcastle, it's either with honesty and admiration and saying, guys, you deserve this for all you've been through, or you get the odd snipe where you can smell the jealousy of them. So we're coming, and don't even think we're not. We are, and we will catch them up. And the fact that we're probably ahead of schedule, considering the limitations on us, it has them all running scared, and we just need to keep going. So very long way of answering Barry's question. No, we can't compete salary-wise, but if we keep increasing like this, players will stay. And this goes back to something I've said since the start of the season. Those players who the club believe, or Eddie Howe believes, will be in this team, or that he wants to be in this team in 3 to 5 years' time, we need to get them on contracts now. If you've learned anything from this summer, it's get those ones that you want to stay on long-term contracts. And that's what we need to be doing. And I've mentioned the 2 fullbacks. I've mentioned Tonali, and you can throw in Botman to that as well. Get these people tied down, and it just stops the press. And we've seen how the press works against us, because the press don't want us to be successful, because they have to then move to the northeast and let that be the hub rather than the northwest of London. So that's me little rant. That's me little bit. I'm going to pass you back to Mr. Voldemort's father for his bit.
Halfway through the show, we'll play the ads. We'll be back after this. A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. You can find them at their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them at www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at their website, mrvickies.co.uk, email info@mrvickies.co.uk, or telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. 2 crew driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges. Hot and cold snacks and drinks available on the coach, all excursions included. Their website, unitedgrouptravel.com, email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com, telephone 01670 632 460 or 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. Thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. And if you like listening to us as a podcast, you can go to Sports Social Podcast Network or to iTunes, Spotify, or other podcast providers. If you want to support the show, then hit the subscribe button. It's free. We do 7 shows a week. Hit the little thumb up under the video, which is the like button, or click share to share to your social media. You can also join the channel on YouTube by hitting the join button for as little as $1.99 a month. If you want to become an NUFC Matters member, you can go to nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk. It's a £25 one-off fee. You get your pen, you get your badge, a key ring, you get your beer mat and your fridge magnet and your membership card, nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk for that. And we have an event early next year, 13th of February 2026, an evening with Beardsley, Waddle and Gascoigne takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House. To buy your tickets for that event, go to the box office 0191 243 1171 or Tyne Theatre and Opera House.uk. And a big thank you to Gavin Lee and Malcolm Peacock, who've bought memberships this week. You'll be in the monthly draw in October, so keep an eye out for that. And don't forget, our Christmas do is on the 21st of November and it is £12 for a ticket for an evening with Warren Barton. Sid from Talking the Tune is DJing, and Adam Henderson's going to be doing a little acoustic set. Tyneside Irish Centre, £12, 21st of November, which is a Friday night, 7 till 10. Get yourself along. All proceeds going to Age UK North Tyneside Dementia. And Peter Beardsley's on in January at the Irish Club as well for the Age UK North Tyneside Dementia. That will be a cracking night with Joe Allen as well. And a little plug for a book that me and Singe, the photographer, are doing, which we are putting all proceeds from this as well going to Age UK North Tyneside Dementia. The promoter and the photographer, thanks to those of you who bought it last night. It's a tenner. 25 years of bringing the stars to Tyneside. A little page from me, a little page from Singe, and a photograph of the star, whether it's Ricky Hatton, Pavel Cernacek, two late great stars, Mike Tyson, Gaza, Buster Blood Vessel, you name it. We've got quite a collection of people over the last 25 years in that book. Lovely black and white photographs as well. But all proceeds going to Age UK North Tyneside Dementia. I'll stick a little QR code above Stu's head at some point so you can order that, or just go to nufcmatterspodcast.co.uk to order it.
Put it above the Christmas tree.
I put it above the Christmas tree. Fantastic. Lee Jones, thanks for your question. He says, if you could bring Elliot Anderson back, Mitch, from Forest, would he go straight into the current midfield or not?
No, I don't think he would. Not with the start three. And it's like sliding doors moments, isn't it? You don't know how he would have developed if he hadn't had the opportunities. He's gone to Forest and had far more opportunity to develop in the top flight and become the player he's turned into. Was there a guarantee that he would do that with more limited opportunities at Newcastle United? Who knows? We just genuinely don't know. What we do know is we were just deprived of a player through no fault of the player and the circumstances of the regulations that were brought in to stifle. And I've just watched another one in Minty playing for Brighton there against Chelsea today. And it's frustrating. It's very frustrating. But it's difficult to know, would he have progressed in the same way? And would he have been able to dislodge any of our starting three? Certainly on what I've seen of him and what I saw of him for England, he has developed since he's left Newcastle United significantly. He's a far better player than the one we let go, in my opinion. So, can we genuinely say he would have developed the same way at Newcastle United? I don't think we can. But, it's the situation that's frustrating more than anything else.
Yeah, it could end up at West Ham. Of course, their manager from Forest now going to West Ham. Potter sacked as well. Unbelievable, that appointment, I think, to start with. But that's a different thing. Yeah, so Elliot Anderson, if he came back to the club, Stu, would he be in your midfield?
No. And I think take the local lad thing away. We all knew he had a talent. And as Mitch just said, he's been allowed to express that talent to get more game time. And the worrying thing is with Miley. But we all know that Eddie Howe didn't want him to go. But we've all also said on many occasions that if we haven't got the best midfield in the league, we've got at least the top three midfielders in the league. So to break into that at a young age would be very, very difficult. But no one stays the same age forever. In an ideal world, if we're sitting where we are now, which we don't live in an ideal world, but we'd have the Tonali, Joe Linton and Bruno triumphant as the three, but then backed up with Ramsey, Miley and Anderson, that would be a lot stronger than what we currently have. But Anderson's now, the way he's played for England, he played well. I mean, not against the best opposition in the world, granted, but it's the same as against Bradford the other night, but for our players. But he's been given a run of games to get better. The talent was there and it's now coming out. But the role that he seems to be developing into is the role that Tonali's got. So to answer the question, is he better than Tonali? No, nowhere near. So, but isn't it nice to say that? that we have better players than other teams and will continue to attract better players. So I don't think he would get in the team. In fact, I know he wouldn't.
If we're going to grow and develop as a team and as a squad, the conversation we should be having is who out there is better than Tonali, better than Bruno, better than Joe Linton that we could bring in. And would you say that about Elliot Anderson at the moment? And I think we know the answer.
Yeah, it's a good point. I tell you what, just rewinding a little bit to what you were saying before, Stu, about for PSR to be PSR, you would have to sell a Tonali and whatever. We had a conversation on here probably about 5 or 6 months ago, probably before the transfer window, where we talked about we're going to have to sell a player. We're going to have to get used to selling Bruno. We're going to have to get used to selling somebody now. The fact we sold Isaac in the summer, does that make it easier, Mitch, do you think, now moving forward? Because now that we've been through that and the fans can see that you haven't just used the Isaac to build a new stand, like we did with the Gascoigne Waddle Beardsley money, the fact that the owners have now just invested over £100 million into the club, into the infrastructure, and they spent the money in the summer, and they've got money to spend. You see where I'm coming at, don't you? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Will it get more easy?
It puts accepting sales more into the mindset of the fan base, and there's a huge section of the fan base, certainly our jaded a lot, that I used to seeing money from transfers disappear up in smoke in some situations, and players go, the money being used for this and that, but never being really reinvested into the squad. There's a generation below us who come through knowing nothing but Mike Ashley. You live check to check within your means, and you don't splurge and you don't take risks. And it takes a lot to build that trust back. And now I think we're at the point where we can see how things are developing. And the more people are able to start to relax, I think there's still a small section of the fan base query if PIF are in for the long run, for example. And the more they do in terms of investment and churning the players and reinvesting money made on transfers into players improving the squad and development, the more that trust comes from all levels of the fan base. And we understand that player trading is part of the growth. And that sales is an important part of player trading that Newcastle United, let's be honest, over the last 10 years have been pretty shit at. We've not been very good at generating profits from players and understanding how that works. And so, there's a lot of us who've been involved around Newcastle United for the thick end of 50 years who understand that players come, players go, and there's still only one Newcastle United. But evermore, that is the sort of the basis on which you've got to trust the ownership, because these are prepared to put that money back in and then some. And that makes a massive, massive difference to me.
Stu, would you agree then it's going to be easier? I mean, we don't want to see Tonali go, but if that was the case next summer and somebody came calling for Tonali or Tino Livramento, but Newcastle are going to, reinvest and build. Is it going to get easier, do you think, if that happens?
Well, yeah, but I don't think... Well, we didn't need to sell Isaac this summer. It was the players' will. And that was, as much as he's been abused, and rightly so, for his histrionics and his antics, we created a lot of that. And I'm sure it's been mentioned many times before, the timeline of what happened. And Newcastle were at fault. And I'm not defending them because his actions weren't defensible, but selling them was a necessary evil. And in all honesty, it highlights all that's wrong with the PSR, because if the reins were cut and we could pay the players what we think that they deserve to be paid at, none of them would leave. You know what I mean? If Isak had got his deal at the start of last season, as was discussed, and then re-signed another long-term contract, that ends any tapping up from Liverpool or any discussions, whispers to the agent, or is he available? Do you think we'll get none of that happens because it's out there? He's just signed a new 5/6-year deal, and he's on as much with us as he could get with you. But because of there might as well be sanctions with PSR. That's what stopped that. But as Mitch said there, players come and go. We've all watched Newcastle. Well, the three of us, I'm sure most people watching us now, we've watched Newcastle for a long, long time. But realistically, the players who have left, the very good players who have left, even if you look at the Gascoignes, Waddles and Beardsleys, you mentioned there, Steve, regarding the Beardsley money paid for the Middleburn stand, they didn't really have a genuine reason to stay. You know, we were always just treading water, and I think as a fan base, we accepted. We hated losing them, but we accepted that they were going on to better things. What's happened this summer is we are on the precipice of achieving consistent, not greatness, but consistent levels of achievement rivaling those who are seen to be above us, and that's on lesser terms. And that's the frustrating part. You know, I often refer to Isak as the tip of our spear, and it was more of an action to weaken us rather than strengthen them. And it might actually have the adverse effect where, because of what we discussed before there, the way Liverpool have got all these egos to try and manage, you know, it could become an unsettled dressing room where, if anything, it's made our dressing room closer. But that doesn't mean we should sit on our laurels. And we all know that the new director of football, whoever that may be, whenever he may come in, his first things, we call them easy wins all the time, is get these players signed up. And you can do that. Then you can make a huge mistake and you'll be forgiven, because it shows that you've got our interest at heart. We're the club, we're the supporters. If you've got our interest at heart, we'll back you, and you will make mistakes and we'll still back you, because that's what you're meant to do. Which, for me, I don't get that we should become a selling club. We don't need to be a selling club, but I can understand if we miss out on the Champions League this season, and if, for example, we use Tonali because that's what was mentioned. He's on reputedly 160,000 a week, but he did take a pay cut, by the way, and he took off salary on the year he was banned. I know people will probably laugh at that and go, oh, bless him, he was only on £80,000 a week. But he didn't have to do it. He offered to do it. But how long is he going to be indebted to us? You know we've got a genuine talent. We did have two genuinely world-class players in our team. We've now got one. We've got maybe two fullbacks that could enter that argument, enter that discussion of becoming genuine world-class. There was rumours before with Tino being courted by Manchester City. Nip that in the bud straight away. Give him the money that him and his agent are asking for, because we can't afford to do it. Because this year, our books are in a very, very healthy situation. Long-term sustainability, there wouldn't be, because we're not generating enough money. But at the moment, we've got a big plus against our figures going into this year. And for me, if that means we give a big chunk of that to Tino Livramento and we top up Tonali's salary to something that he's more than happy to stay for, give Botman a bit extra, give Lewis Hall, he's going to have his wages at least tripled, possibly even quadrupled. Otherwise, we all know how good he was. Until he got his injury, was he not player of the season for us? And he's just working his way back into the team, and he'll get that good again. And we have to then start saying we need to give you what you're worth to stop other people doing what's happened this summer. So if that means it's an extra 20 million a year, I'd rather give them that and sell someone like a Shearer for 30 million, and then go and buy a player for 10 million. That's not going to benefit the squad. We've got to keep the ones that we've got if we're going to progress, and that takes us all the way back to generating more income. Now, who could we actually suggest could do that to help us? I have no idea.
Yeah, Scott, thank you for your comment. Great show, lads. Love listening to you three. Always listen on Spotify the next morning when walking the dog. Keep up with the great work, lads. Proper blokes, proper Newcastle fans through and through. Thank you very much, Scott. Much
Does that mean
appreciated.
he's watching last week's then? Because he doesn't watch it till the morning.
Interesting. I mean, you're talking finance, Stu, and quite a few comments coming in about, all of that. 100 million's been put into the club, yeah, and we discussed that last night, Paul. Over 100 million, I think, and 5 million gone to the women's team, which is fantastic. And I did show last night on the show a little bit of footage from the Gateshead changing rooms. They haven't just put 5 million into the women's team, but they've also invested in the infrastructure at Gateshead Stadium, which is great. Gary asks a question. I don't know whether either of you know the answer to this. One of our main sponsors is being renewed, he says. Do we know who it is? Stella, he says.
Yes, good, Mitch.
Well, either of you.
Don't know, mate.
I don't know.
Not heard that myself, so be interesting. It could be, because the word was their sponsorship deal was modified by the Premier League, and now perhaps with the Man City APT stuff, perhaps that needs to be modified back. Who knows?
Yeah, because they did want to give us a lot more than what was eventually agreed. And now, when Stella took us, we hadn't been in the Champions League. We were just getting into there, weren't we? So now, 2 years and 3, they can justify giving us more money. And I don't think the Premier League have the stomach to fight Newcastle United or something like this. So we could actually be, I hope he means live instead of love there, but at the end of the day, good luck to you, Scott, if it's love. It's more than
music. There you go.
Exactly. I have Barry White's on in the background. My gravelly voice, you probably think I am Barry White, that's why he's wrote love. But realistically, how many main sponsors do we have? Stella's the obvious one, and I know we've discussed how many other teams' first main sponsor have done as well as what Stella have for us. With the light shows and then how supportive they've been in promoting us. They've been fantastic. Yes, if it is Stella, I could see that happening. And this 100 million money getting put in wasn't just some loose change. It probably is just loose change found down the back of the PIF sofa, but everything's done for a reason. It would be strategic. More importantly, so is the 5 million towards the women's team, because 5 million in the women's second division, as they are, the equivalent of the old second division, that's big money. And that allows them to pay bigger salaries, which allows the women's team to grow, which could mean in a year's time, 2 years' time, 3 years' time, they could sell the women's team for a lot more than the 5 million they've just chucked in. So everything happens for a reason with PIF, as we've so often mentioned here.
Just want to ask you, you've probably seen the clip of Roy Keane on one of these podcasts that footballers do now. Every footballer's doing a podcast, Mitch, but he was sitting around a table with Ian Wright, with Gary Neville.
It's off the overlap guy one, yeah.
And that lass who's got a Sunderland accent who used to play football. I can't remember her name. That's it. And they were sitting there, and Roy Keane went completely, for me, overboard with his criticism of Alan Shearer. Basically putting Eric Cantona and ahead of him as a striker, and just basically saying he was sly, and he wouldn't give him any praise. What did he make of that? Was that just for clicks? I think
kept using the word sneaky. How much of it is for clicks? How much of it is him still saving face because he shit his pants at St James's Park? Let's just make no bones about it. The so-called Man United hard man absolutely shit himself.
And he missed the punch and all, didn't he?
Exactly. And so he's covering his own blushes and talking all about, talk about sneaky. He wants to talk about, what he did to Haaland, Yeah, he should stick the dog walking.
Have you seen it, Stu? It's ridiculous.
Yeah, I've seen a bit of it. He just come across for exactly what he is. He's just a bitter guy. And he's angry with himself about most things. And we all, well, three of us were at that game, but many people have watched it live there and watched it since. He was wanting to be dragged back, and anyone wants to watch it again.
Stop me. Hold me back.
Shearer never budged when he swung the punch. So if he wanted to punch him, he would have hit him, but he didn't. He missed, and Shearer never flinched. So you know, he's probably the toughest man in his own household when everyone's out. But it just come across as, for me, like what Man United were in the 90s, and the arrogance that they had. And he's off the opinion where everything he says is right. And I think he's loving being controversial. And he said that knowing fine well. And if that's what he is, and he is a pundit, which he's lost a lot of respect, because any pundit worth the salt will tell you, not us being biased, Alan Shearer was the best Premier League centre forward there's ever been. So if he wants to run him down, then he's just making a knob of himself, which he does quite often.
I'll be absolutely honest. I've enjoyed quite a lot of what Roy Keane's done as a pundit in the last couple of years. He's evolved and changed into something quite different to the, borderline thug that used to play for Man United. And I've enjoyed some of his insights and some of his very raw honesty. That reaction, talking about Alan Shearer, tells me one thing and one thing alone. There's a personal issue there that he's still holding, and frankly, he doesn't have the balls to go up and say it to Shearer's face.
But it's not just him, Mitch. Carragher's had a go at Shearer the last week or so as well. On the programme he does with Mike Richards. And both Carragher and Keane, who coincidentally go on Sky together, Carragher had a go at Mike Richards, saying, "Oh, just because you're pals with Shearer, because you're doing the podcast with him." And then Keane said the same to Ian Wright, who defended him, just because he's your pal. Yeah. So Ian Wright, then all of a sudden his opinion's worthless because it doesn't agree with his bitter, twisted words. I wouldn't say, I just think he made a knob of him. Well, I don't think he did make a knob of himself, but it's not the first time, and I'm sure it won't be the last.
Okay.
Yeah, SHIT, Scared of Shearer is the song, and it'll ring out, I'm sure, next time Newcastle fans bump into Roy Keane. Paul says if we can get Champions League again this season, that's another massive step for us to grow financially and from a marketing perspective, which is what the lads were saying. Roger thinks maybe the rules might get changed again to keep Newcastle at bay. Go on, Mitch.
Not this time.
They can't, and I think we've got a wonderful prescient example in terms of Villa. They took gambles that weren't, in my opinion, calculated gambles. They were just gambles, and they're paying for it, and they're still paying for it. And we haven't gone down that route, and I'm glad we haven't gone down that route. For me, there's no other reason than Monchi wants away from his job at Villa because he knows he's screwed it up, really. They took gambles on wage levels that were obscene. They took gambles on on transfer fees that weren't restricted and sensible. And then they've had to sell when they've been in positions of weakness. And yes, they've sold a lot of value players, but they've probably not generated the full value that they could have done from those players if they were selling from a position of strength. We've just gone through this transition. Remember, at the end of last season, the boogies in certain parts of the media started talking about the phrase the Big Seven. We were at that point where we were crossing an idea where things were changing. This summer is the first summer where I think we can genuinely say we went toe to toe with some of the big names in the Premier League and the big names in Europe. And okay, you could suggest we've had our asses handed to a little bit out of naivety, out of maybe not having the right people in place to try and help do that job better. But by the by, that's us growing and developing, and we haven't slipped back. We've not had to sell half our squad to satisfy PSR. And even with Isaac's departure, we've been left with most certainly a stronger squad, if perhaps a little weaker starting 11. Although I reserve that until I see Wisser in place. And so we've got something we can look at very directly. And once again, like so many times in football, when we look at in comparison to say certain situations that other clubs have been in, we can genuinely go there, but for the grace of God, go I.
Just a quick one here. Neil Charisma says, I always liked John Beresford and Warren Barton as pundits back in the day on Sky. They used to make the odd appearance. Yeah, I mean, Newcastle, I've had a few. I think Les Ferdinand does a good job. Shea Gibbons doing quite well, I think, on Match of the Day. Have you got a favourite between you lads? Have you got a favourite presenter or a favourite pundit? It doesn't have to be a player. Who for you? Just because we've only got 5 minutes left. Who for you has been your favourite of all time?
Tell you who I love listening to, and I've seen a lot of them out here, because he gets on to be in sport, Marcel Desailly.
All right, okay.
What an intelligent, erudite, well-spoken and insightful gentleman he is. He criticises players with class. He doesn't pull them apart. He gives praise only where it's due. And he's honest. He comes across that every opinion is honest. And I love listening to him. I've had the pleasure of his company for half an hour. When I bumped into him in Dubai, he was with Andy Kerr from BN Sports. And what a lovely gentleman he is. And I would love to spend more time in his company.
All right, good stuff. Stu?
And the obvious one for me, for those who watch back home, would be Ali McCoist. I think his enthusiasm, and he tries to be as insightful as possible and as impartial as possible. And you can tell he's got a genuine passion for it, and he speaks from the heart. He's not just one that comes out with a tried and tested, like, cliches that people want to hear. But I still haven't moved on from the Roy Keane and Alan Shearer thing. But bear in mind, Roy Keane admitted to wanting to deliberately hurt someone, and Carragher spits on little girls in cars. But they can say that Shearer's this, that, and the other. But I'm happy to do a bit extra time, Steve, if you're free.
All right, yeah, I can do it if Mitch is okay. Mitch is on a social, so if you're all right. I've got to be honest, Billy. Billy is nicked my two. That's my favourite two. Bring those two guys back if we could. Saints and Greavesy were absolutely brilliant, and you can still catch some of their stuff on YouTube. But honestly, when Satanta brought them back, and of course that TV channel's long gone now, that was a blast from the past, but they were absolutely brilliant. So yeah, Saints and Greavesy were the best, Billy, 100%, mate. I agree with you wholeheartedly. Tomorrow, let's look ahead to tomorrow then. We've already spoken, Mitch, about it. So Stu, I'll come to you about the match itself. Arsenal don't travel well to St James's Park, and as you quite rightly mentioned earlier on, it's been it's a generation now since Arsenal really did so well up here. But it's a generation for Newcastle to get 4 wins in a row against Arsenal in the league. So what's your feelings about this game?
You've got your head and your heart and somewhere in between. Of course, my heart's saying 3-1. My head says that Arsenal squad is at this stage better than ours, and probably more finely tuned going into this game than ours are. But then you have to take into account home advantage, the support that we can give, and I think the manager has a mentality problem with us, and I believe it's not personal with Eddie Howe, because Eddie Howe, I'm sure, hasn't said anything that would wind him up. But I think, how do I say this without? He probably wishes he was more like him. You know what I mean, and be able to accept defeat and be able to improve. And I think he puts himself under a lot of pressure to beat Newcastle, and because we beat them one time, and then we beat them again, and then we tanned them 3 times last season. And really, we should have done it 4 times. If it wasn't for a better finishing, the game could have been out of sight by half time. It's as if we've got their number, and that slightly distracts them from what his game is. And I guess people are saying if Arsenal don't win this, they won't win the league. But if Arsenal don't win tomorrow, they'll still be the same points behind Liverpool as they were today, won't they? So psychologically, that might give them a bit of, you would think, a boost, but it might actually think, well, it doesn't matter if we don't come away with all 3 points. if it was my head, I would say that Arsenal would win. My heart says 3-1, and so I think we're not scoring loads of goals. We're not conceding many. They're not conceding many. So it has like a 1-0 or 0-0 written all over it. So on the basis of that, it'll probably be like a 7-goal thriller. And we've got two teams that are capable of doing that if they get in the stride properly. A lot will depend on the team that Eddie Howe plays. Does he go with a 5 at the back to try and appease the back 3 and sort of then takes away our strength up front by trying to make sure we don't get beaten and then see what happens after that? Or does he do what he does against Barcelona and say, yeah, this is our patch. We're going to show you what we're about and really go for it. And I think it'll be the latter. I think you'll play a 4 at the back. You play a 4-3-3 and we'll just bombard them for 30 minutes. And if we can get a lead, that's when you can switch to the 5 at the back. And the way this team is mentally wise and the way they're well drilled, the more comfortable defending the lead than they are chasing one, trying to get back into the game. And the two semi-final legs last season against Arsenal showed that. So for me, I think, of course, I've got my 3-1 bet on, but I think we could beat them 1-0 because we can lock them down. And Saka may be back. And this is why I think they'll play Tino at left back and put Trippier on at right back with Hall coming on to replace Hall and swap them back over once they need to show things up pace-wise.
Yeah, starting 11 is not something we really went into. I've got to be honest, I genuinely think it'll be Pope in goal. I think he'll go with Trippier as long as he's fit and Livramento right and left. I think he'll go with Chow and I think he'll go with Byrne in the centre-half positions. I do think he'll go with the usual 3 in the midfield. I think he'll go with Alanga and Gordon left and right. And I think he'll go with Voldemort up front. I think that's what he'll start with. I don't think he'll trust Asula to start the game. I think he'll come on as a 20-minute sub as usual. But, of course, he could go with the 3 centre-halves. But I'd be surprised. I'm not sure whether Botman is up for playing 3 games in a week, Mitch. That's the only question mark I would have on this.
And I think Stu's right. I think the way to go with this is you play your strongest 11. You play the style you're used to because it's our turf. You're coming here. You're on our patch, kids. Come and try your fancy dance stuff here and let's see what happens. There's many other teams that tried and failed, including you on multiple occasions. So, I think we're set for a very good game. I think, I can't disagree with your thoughts on team selection at all. And put the effort in, we're set to get the reward once again. It'll be a good game, I'm quite sure of that. I think even if it's a very tight game, I think it'll still be a very good and highly competitive game of football.
Yeah, I do.
Didier Dromey is a commentator, or he's excellent, but he's only on beIN Sports. That's why I didn't want to mention him before. But he's really, really good, and although he favours Newcastle, he's very, very fair in his analysis.
Yeah. Talking of analysis, they've got a new thing on Sky, which I'm sure most of you will have seen, called Fananalysis, which has got fans from different clubs on. But in between all that, they have an ex-professional sitting in the studio with an interviewer, usually on a Friday in the build-up to the Premier League. Now, they did an interesting poll yesterday as to who was the best manager between Eddie Howe and Mikel Arteta. Now, Eddie Howe won. Who's done best, Eddie Howe or Arteta? Eddie Howe won. It was resounding. It was about 70-30 percentage-wise. The stats were quite interesting, and I did screenshot it so we could talk about it at some point this week, but I'll use it today. There we go. Appointed on the 19th of December, and Howe was appointed on the 21st of November. Transfer spend, 998 million for Arteta, 694 million for Howe. Champions League qualification, 3 times for Arsenal, 2 times for Newcastle. Cup finals, 2 for Newcastle, 1 for Arsenal. Major trophies, 1 each. Win percentage is the only thing that really, other than Champions League qualification, Arteta can do better at, 59% to Eddie's 50%. Now, stats, I know, but that made an interesting read, that, Mitch. Bearing in mind, Newcastle are hamstrung with PSR. But I think the other thing really which needs to be taken into consideration here is expectation levels. Because expectation levels at Newcastle really, at this moment in time, are qualification for Champions League and hopefully getting to a cup final and winning one. Whereas Arsenal's is winning the Premier League or winning the Champions League or both. So I think it's no wonder, I think, that Howe won this particular, particular thing.
And their expectations are based on the past. Okay, a more recent past than ours. But when we get accused of having unrealistic, ideas above our station, that's very interesting data, particularly when you compare how much has been spent as well.
Thoughts, Stu? Sunderland 1-up, by the way.
Who was Forest?
Sunderland 1-up at Forest, yeah.
Sorry, I've got 3-1 Forest, don't worry. The thing with that stat there, Steve, it doesn't really, it doesn't really, it actually doesn't show where they started from. It gives the dates, but Arteta took over an Arsenal team that had qualified for 17 Champions League seasons in a row, all bar the season prior to that, when, the guy at Villa took them and they didn't qualify for it. So they were always known as a top 3, top 4 team. Newcastle were just flirting with relegation or being relegated, and they had no depth in the squad. They had no real talent in the squad. So even on the money spent, they've spent more. But at the same time, they've been able to sell for more as well. We've known it. We've seen it. We've lived it. What we had to sell until Isaac. So this is a situation that we'll get them in. And I think sometimes now people are only realising what a good job Eddie Howe has done, because they were too busy knocking Newcastle United because they were Saudi-owned. They were showing their own, whether it be Islamophobia or anything that they didn't want to really praise Newcastle United for. It was dead easy. Oh, it's Saudi ownership. They're gonna spend money, but that figure shows we still haven't spent anywhere near as much as them. But look how much they've been able to sell for as well. We haven't. Take Isaac out, and we'd be lucky to have sold players for just over 100 million. I would say in 4 years, they can sell that every year. And as I said, they started from a position where I think his first year he got them 8th, and after that they've qualified every other time. But he's spent about quarter of a billion, 3 or 4 windows in a row in the summers. We've never had the luxury of doing that. So if it's who's the better manager, I don't like those national polls on Sky Sports, because they end up getting swamped with Liverpool fans, or there'll be fans who don't like Arsenal. And for the Mackhams who want to vote against Newcastle, it might cost them 20 pence, and they won't want to use that anyway. So those polls are normally distorted, but it was quite significant, as you said, if it was 70-30. But I don't even think Eddie Howe and Arteta should even be in the same conversation. Who's the best manager? Because I reckon if you wanted to do a poll of Arsenal fans, ask them, would you swap managers now? And I reckon you'd get about 90% saying to take Eddie Howe tomorrow over Arteta.
Okay, folks, we have done a little bit of extra time. Thank you very much for tuning in on this wonderful Saturday night. And we will be back tomorrow, 10 o'clock in the morning for Three's a Crowd, the North East Football Show. But for now, thanks to Mitch, thanks to Sue, thanks to everybody for watching. If you are watching on Twitter, jump over to YouTube, search NUFC Matters, and hit the subscribe button. We do 7 shows a week, and it is absolutely free. Take care. Thanks, lads.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers, everyone.